Hello, friends. Welcome back. Okay, listen, friends. I want to talk to you all today about the difference between confidence and arrogance. Now, the reason why I think this is so important is because, in my experience, we've come pretty far in doing a lot of work to create gender neutrality. And still, I see so many women and so many people of color and so many people from marginalized communities being afraid to stand in their confidence. And I get it. I know, I get it. I totally get it. I know why it's scary. I know why we are afraid to do it. And it's also time. It's time. I see because so many of my clients are these incredible folks that are wanting to do great in the world and are essentially leaders at heart. They're really good and it's just who they are. They're just really good at what they do. However, they don't see themselves as leaders, or they judge themselves, or they have incredible imposter syndrome, and they're afraid to really stand tall in who they are. And, what I've come to see is that what my clients are afraid of, and this might be you too, is not the sense of confidence. You're not afraid to appear confident. What you're afraid of is to appear as arrogant. You don't want to be arrogant. Or you're not afraid to be confident, but you are afraid to be judged. You don't want anyone to think that who does she think she is, or she's too big for her britches, or anything like that. And I get it. I totally get it. But I'm going to just share with you that there is a difference between confidence and arrogance. And there is a way for you to show up in all of your power, to show up in all of your power without being arrogant. And the antidote to all of that is humility. So I want to talk today about what confidence actually is, what is arrogance and when arrogance shows up, and then how to stand in your own confidence. Okay. So again, there is a difference between confidence and arrogance. And I get none of us want to be perceived as arrogant, me neither. But I want to tease that apart because what I've learned is that it's not the same thing by any means. And you can show up as confident without being arrogant. All right. So, what is confidence? Confidence, or the sense of self confidence, is rooted in authenticity. It's the sense of being self assured without needing to prove anything to anybody. It's the sense of knowing I know who I am, I know what I offer, and I don't need to prove myself to anyone. So I'm going to share with you a message I got in one of my meditations, this download I got, which was so beautiful. This came to me a couple months ago, which is your job is not to prove yourself to anyone. It's just to believe in yourself. That's it. And I think self-confidence is exactly that. You know who you are. You know who you are not. You know what you do. You know what you don't do. I think about this a lot with entrepreneurs in business, especially when you're new out there, because you want to do everything for everybody, because I think a lot of that comes from you wanting to be helpful, but also wanting to make money. But it actually slows you down and it gets in the way of you being successful because you're not leaning into who you actually are. And the more you can lean into who you are, what you do, what you don't do, the more self-confidence you build. And the more confidence you build, the more trust you instill in the people that want to work with you. And everything is built off the currency of trust. If people trust you, they're going to want to work with you. If people trust you, they're going to follow you. If you're a leader, then you can influence your folks if they trust you. Everything is built off trust, and trust is rooted in authenticity. And that is where self-confidence comes from. It comes from authenticity. And anytime you're in that energy of needing to prove yourself, that is the opposite. That does not build trust. So self-confidence itself has three key elements. Number one, self-efficacy, the belief in your capacity to perform tasks or achieve goals. Self-efficacy, I believe in myself that I can figure things out. That's self-efficacy. Self-worth, that's the second one. Self-worth, a sense of inherent value as a person, independent of your titles, independent of what you can achieve, that you as a person are valuable. I can sleep in because I don't feel good, and that's okay. That's not going to erode my confidence, my self-confidence. because your worth is not tied to what you do. Your worth is not tied to your titles or your achievements or your ability to be productive. Okay, so that's the second one. The third element is resilience, the ability to recover and bounce back when things don't go well. And the last one is authenticity, showing up as yourself without needing to shrink or perform. Authenticity, without needing to shrink or perform. That is so important. Notice self-confidence. Self-confidence means that you have this internal assurance that you can handle any challenges or setbacks, that you know that your skills are valuable, that you are worthy of respect, you're worthy of opportunities and success. That's self-confidence. What it is not perfectionism. You do not need to be perfect to have a sense of confidence, because perfectionism is this fear that I have to be flawless all the time. What will people think of me? No, that is not self-confidence. That is perfectionism. And it is not this external bravado, like, oh, look at me, I'm so great at all of these things. That's not self-confidence either. Both of those things, perfectionism and that external bravado, those are fear-based. They're coming from this fear that I'm not good enough, that I need to prove myself to someone. That is not self-confidence. Self-confidence is grounded in humility. It's grounded in love, love for myself. That is self-confidence, not fear. So arrogance, let's talk about arrogance, because what I want to make sure to draw the distinction here is the difference between self-confidence and arrogance, okay? Arrogance, on the other hand, is deep insecurity. Folks that are arrogant, they do that because they're insecure. They're insecure and they root themselves in comparison. I have to be better than them. I have to know more than them. That's how they feel like they gain their self-worth and value. Like, I'm not sure I'm enough, so I'm going to have to inflate myself and I'm going to have to push others down so that I can feel better or bigger. You know, I talk about this and you see this all the time, I'm sure, in your circles, in your professional circles, but this is like coming from way deep down, from when people are like 6 or 7 years old. You start noticing out in the playground when kids start being mean to other kids because they're feeling so insecure in themselves. That is arrogance, perfectionism, external bravado. Those are all fear-based, fear of not being good enough, fear that I'm going to be judged. So it doesn't show up because somebody is a bad person. And this is going to require a deep muscle of compassion for us to really understand, is that when someone is showing up as arrogant, they're not bad. They're doing it to protect themselves. They're doing it because they're afraid that they're not good enough. They're overcompensating for imposter syndrome. Oof. This is the truth. They are overcompensating for imposter syndrome. By the way, this was me. The very first time I got a job as a department chief, my very first department chief role, I was really young. I was like a year and a half out of residency. No, yes, a year out of residency. And I'm also a 5 foot tall, 100-pound, light-skinned Latina. And my department it was like 80% men. Most of them were all white men. And I felt so insecure. They're all older than me. They've been at this hospital so much longer than me. And they've been practicing emergency medicine longer than I had. I was so insecure. And the way my insecurity showed up was arrogance. And I caught myself because I remember I was in a department meeting and somebody was giving an idea, and I immediately wanted to show that I knew more than that person, because I felt like I needed to show that I was worthy of the position. Because what if they judged me? What if they didn't think I was good enough as their leader? So that was how arrogance showed up. I'm not a bad person, but at the time I was so insecure. So it will show up from fear that you're not good enough, overcompensating again for imposter syndrome. It also shows up in these old hierarchical leadership models where the sense of bravado and dominance is rewarded. And I say old hierarchical leadership models, although I know very well that they still exist in a lot of corporate culture, where arrogance still rules. You have to be arrogant to show that you know. And I have so much compassion for those folks because I know it's not coming from a bad place. I know it's coming from fear. And the other big way arrogance shows up is when our identity is tied to our achievements. It's an ego attachment. When our identity and our self-worth is attached to how much I know or my titles. So this you will see in people that always want to be right. They always want to know something more than you. So they always want to add something to the conversation. That is arrogance. That is how arrogance will show up sometimes, because people are so afraid. Because if their identity, if their self-worth is attached to this identity of knowing more or achievement, then they have to know more than you, or they're not going to be good enough. Then their self-worth is going to get a big dagger to their heart. And for many of us, especially if you're a child of an immigrant, if you are a first generation professional, if you're an entrepreneur, there's sometimes these deeper cultural layers where we grew up having to prove ourselves, whether we knew it or not. Oh man, I can really speak to this one from personal experience. We grew up needing to prove that we were smart enough to be in the room, that we deserved to be there, that we deserved the promotion, that we deserved getting into college. Like we grew up having to prove ourselves. And sometimes arrogance became a survival strategy. And that was some deep healing I had to do for myself, because to finally get down to a place of like self-confidence, grounded in humility, and releasing all of the stories of having to prove myself, that took a lot of work. So just know there's so many nuances here as to how it shows up, but arrogance is not the same as self-confidence. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the antidote between confidence and arrogance. And the antidote is humility. Humility. Think about it. Think about a leader that you admire. Think about a leader you admire. I think about sometimes, a lot of my heroes, leadership heroes when I was growing up, were really awesome civil rights leaders: Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, Cesar Chavez. And when I thought about those leaders, what I admired about them was their humility. It was the fact that they were working hard. They had a ton of courage. They were committed to making the world a better place and fighting for their people. But they were so humble in that they brought up people around them. They knew that they didn't always have the answer. So I think about humility as being deeply rooted in curiosity, in knowing that I don't know everything, and recognizing that I am one small, tiny part of something so much bigger than me. That doesn't mean that I'm not as good as everything around me. It just means that I'm one small part of something so much bigger. In fact, the word humility, the root word, H-U-M-S, hummus, not the hummus that you eat, but hummus from humility, the word literally means earth, soil, to be grounded. So when you think of folks who are deeply grounded, that is humility in action. Humility means that we are deeply grounded, that we recognize we are part of something so much bigger than us, that there's no way that we could know everything. I don't even know what I don't know. That is deep humility. And when you can ground yourself in that, then curiosity just becomes who you are. Humility is just being curious. That's so interesting. Tell me more. Wow, I had no idea. Wow, cool. That is humility, curiosity, and knowing that you are bigger. You are a part of something so much bigger than you. When I think about this, and here's how I want you to really think about it for yourself, is humility gives me the ability to honor my sacredness. I can honor myself and honor my sacredness while also honoring the sacredness of everyone around me. I am not better than anybody around me, and nobody is better than me. We're all the same. We all have different life experiences. We might have different titles, but my sacredness is valuable, as is their sacredness. And when I can do that, it really grounds me in wanting to learn more, wanting to be curious, wanting to learn from people's lived experience. That's the beauty of humility. Okay, so how do you know when you are coming from arrogance versus confidence? Man, I sure do wish that I had these questions. I wish I had these tools back when I was leading in that department. I wish I would have known that, holy smokes, I was so afraid. So how do you know when you're embodying confidence versus arrogance? And this is something that I really want you to sit with for all of you listening, because for those of you that are afraid to shine your light because you don't want to be seen as arrogant, notice what I'm sharing with you right now, because you will see, That's so fascinating. I hardly ever come from arrogance because so many of you don't have an arrogant bone in your body. You are incredibly humble people. And so we need to release this fear of being arrogant because you don't even have an arrogant bone in your body. So how do you know which one you're embodying? Okay, here's some questions to ask yourself. Number one, am I sharing from a place of service or am I trying to prove something? Oof, when you are trying to prove something, that is fear-based. When you are trying to prove something, that is fear-based. So notice how it feels in your body when you're trying to prove that you're right or trying to prove that they're wrong. That is not coming from a place of confidence. A place of confidence says, sounds like we disagree. If they want to know more and they're asking questions and you're sharing with them because they're asking questions, that is a different energy than trying to prove them wrong. Okay, number two, do I make space for others' perspectives? Do I make space for the perspectives of others, or am I constantly dismissing them? This is the one that I was doing when I was at department chair early on. Other people had perspectives and I would dismiss them until I learned, holy smokes, it was so valuable to hear and see my blind spots. So that's a question for you. Are you making space? Are you listening? The third one, do I acknowledge my strengths? And do I acknowledge that I still have blind spots? Because you can have both. You are a sacred being. Sacred beings are incredible human beings, all of us. We have a ton of strengths, but we also don't know what we don't know. We have a ton of blind spots. So it's really important to know both of those things. We can hold both of those. We can be capable and still have blind spots. We can be leaders and still not know everything. That's why we rely on teams around us. And here's the last one. Do people feel inspired and safe around me? Or do they feel small and defensive around me? Oof, this one is so important. Do I help people feel safe around me? Do people feel, this is so important to me. The more and more I've grown in just as a human being, but also as a coach and as a leader, I've learned that the number one most important skill to have is the skill of self-regulation. When you regulate your nervous system, you show up confident and humble and grounded. Other people, you are just by coherence, just by your electromagnetism, you create safety in those around you. They will co-regulate around you. That is so important. It is so important. Do people feel safe around me? This is, I think, one of the reasons why my clients get results so fast, even when I'm doing group coaching. I lead group coaching sessions with leaders of anywhere from like 15 to 20 people. And the results we get in those groups is fascinating. It's incredible. We published articles around it. And I realize a big part of it is that I can create that safety. I show up that way. So I create that safety in the group. And when the group feels safe, they're more able to be vulnerable and let down their guard, which allows them to grow and transform so much faster. My one-on-one clients, I guarantee you would all say the same thing. All right, so here's how you can check your body. Okay, so those are some questions to ask your mind. How can you check in with your body? Number one, confidence is going to feel calm. Okay, confidence is calm because your nervous system is regulated. When you are in true self-confidence, it's calm, it's regulating, it's an expansive feeling. Arrogance, on the other hand, feels tight. It's a defensive feeling. So where do you feel arrogance? Maybe you feel it in your chest, or maybe you feel it in your stomach. All of a sudden, you feel like you need to protect yourself, defend yourself. So notice the difference. When I'm feeling safe, when I'm feeling regulated, when I'm feeling like myself, how do I feel? I can breathe. I walk slow. I'm much more curious. When I'm feeling dysregulated, how do I feel? Ooh, like I need to like stand tall. Oh, I need to talk like this, or I need to prove that I'm right or that I belong in this space. All right, so that's interesting, right? So what the science, what neuroscience tells us is that when you are confident, you are coming from the part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for clear thinking, for judgment, social interaction, and empathy. Your empathy is turned on versus when you're coming from arrogance, because arrogance, again, is a fear-based response. And because it's a fear-based response, your fear center is turned on, your amygdala. Your brain is sensing a threat. and your amygdala is turned on because you think you need to protect yourself, protect your ego. So that's how you know whether it's in your body, check your body, or ask yourself those questions. Okay, so if we are normally self-confident, but then we've shifted into arrogance because we're afraid, it's going to happen, happens to all of us. It still happens to me. I've been doing this work for 10 years, and there are still some spaces where I notice, whew, like my arrogance just showed up all of a sudden. Why? Because I'm afraid, because I don't feel like I belong, because I feel like I need to prove myself. Oof, and I can feel it now in my body, so I can shift much faster. So if you are in that space, how do you shift back? So let's talk about that. Here are a few practices to help you shift back. Number one, the name of the game is always awareness. What you want to do is you want to catch the moment you start feeling like you need to prove yourself. Now, I want you to just notice, how does it feel in my body when I need to prove myself? Or what changes in my tone of voice? Or how do I stand? Do I stand differently when I need to do that? Do I feel like I need to defend myself more? So notice, sometimes it's a feeling in the body, sometimes it's a thought, sometimes it's your posture. That's your ego talking. So as soon as you have the awareness, you want to take a breath. And sometimes just having the awareness is enough. If you have the awareness and you need to reframe, here you go. I want you to remember to just say to yourself, I have nothing to prove here, nothing to prove. I am enough. I have nothing to prove here. And then I take a deep breath and I release. Okay, that's awareness. The second one is, this is really important because what I have seen happen a lot is when people have a sense of confidence, but then they start failing at something that they were normally really good at, or maybe they weren't good at it, they'd never done it before. All of a sudden, it turns on the amygdala part of the brain. And instead of seeing this like failure as feedback, they see it as blaming or denying, telling them like, oh, you must not be good enough. This must be somebody else's fault. So as soon as you start to notice that, blaming something on someone else, not wanting to take personal responsibility, you pause and you say, okay, this is just information. This is just data. What can I learn from this? I love this so much. In fact, one of the things that I do routinely that I'm going to invite all of you to do if this resonates is evaluate. So I evaluate anything I do that does not work, I evaluate. And then I started doing it when it did work. Lo and behold, things started getting better. So this simple evaluation, 3 questions: what worked, what didn't work, what will I do differently next time? And that's it, because I just see every failure now as a learning opportunity. And I have learned that the more I fail, the faster I get at failing and getting back up again, the more I'm able to get more stuff done in the world, the better able I am to be in service to the world. So you can be in service to the world, you can have a bigger impact the more and more you get yourself back up again after failing. But when you sit and you wallow and you blame and you say, oh, this must be, like all of those things, first of all, you're creating this negative feedback loop that doesn't feel good in your body, but also you're just sitting in time that you're never going to get back. So your choice, you choose which one you want to do, but just notice how it makes you feel. And the last one that I think is so important is ground yourself in purpose. Ground yourself in purpose. As soon as you notice that maybe you shifted into arrogance, take a deep breath, step back. Remember, it's not about the title. I mean, it will be about the title for a little bit in your life, it's different for everybody, but in my experience, a lot of people in the beginning are trying to prove themselves. And so they're working really hard and pushing really hard and looking for all these titles. And then they get promoted and then they're so excited. And then all of a sudden they get to this place where they're like, huh, well, what's the purpose of any of this anyway? And then they realize it's not about them. It's about being in service to make this world a better place. And when you get to that place, it is freedom. It is sovereignty. It is the most liberating, peaceful place to be, where you are no longer needing to prove yourself to anybody, not even to yourself. That is beautiful. So if you start a place of like noticing, like, oh, I'm just looking for the next thing, the next achievement, the next title, I'm still growing. I have one of my very first podcast episodes on this podcast. It's what is it called? It's called I think it's called Redefining Success. Oh, it's the first episode, Redefining Success. So episode number 1, go back and listen to that one, because that is going to really, really help you. And I'm just going to remind you that when you ground yourself in purpose, instead of proving yourself to somebody, or instead of some like title or amount of money in your bank, you start releasing serotonin instead of dopamine. Serotonin and dopamine are two of our biggest feel-good hormones in our body. The difference between them is that dopamine is very short-lived. You get a spike, it goes away. You get a spike, it goes away, which is why folks that are constantly those high achieving, like this was me, by the way, you always have to chase what's next in order to keep that sense of dopamine high, or you're going to feel a big lull. I remember coaching somebody. She was a management consultant, and she was the youngest person to make partner in her management consulting firm. She also has this long history of just being an overachiever. And when she made partner, within like 2 weeks, she's like, "Oh, what's next?" I'm like, "Whoa, hold on a second. You're the first, you're like a female at your management consulting firm, not a ton of female partners, but also the youngest person to make partner, and you happen to be a woman. That's a big deal to celebrate." And it was so uncomfortable for her to celebrate because she'd been living her life on dopamine highs. Now, the opposite is serotonin. When you ground yourself in purpose, when you ground yourself in something so much bigger than you, it creates a sense of fulfillment and that feel-good hormone serotonin, which lasts longer in your body. It has way longer peaks and longer plateaus, so you don't have these big dips. It is such a beautiful place to come from. Okay, so again, the whole reason I created this episode is because I still have so many clients that are afraid to show up in their true confidence, to really ground themselves in who they are and be confident because they're still afraid. Like, what if somebody will judge me? What if somebody thinks I'm too big for my britches? And what I realize is that deep down, they're really afraid of being thought of as arrogant. But confidence, true self-confidence, is authenticity. It's humility. It's knowing that you are part of something so much bigger than you. That is true self-confidence. Humility is your bridge. Humility doesn't mean that you're meek and that you play small and that you need to self-deprecate. That is not humility at all. That is not humility. Humility is just being curious, is knowing that you're bigger, is knowing that you are one small part of something so much bigger than you. Humility is knowing that you are connected to the earth. Humility is honoring your sacredness and honoring the sacredness of everybody else around you, and knowing that you are not better than anyone else, but no one is better than you. That is humility. And that is what we need to lean into, because all of you are incredibly confident people. Very few of us have arrogant bones in our body on purpose. When they do show up, it's because we're afraid. So we get to love ourselves and bring ourselves back to a place of curiosity, a place of humility, and a place of self-confidence. Because the more you let your light shine, the more you give permission to others around you to let their light shine too. All right, sweet friends, I'll see you next week. Adios.